I am a rescuer. I rescued a body, but its true occupant never left. The body was breathing when I pulled it from the wreckage, but the person inside had been gone for 3 days. My name is Marcus Thompson, and I've been a search and rescue specialist with Colorado Mountain Rescue for 12 years. I've pulled hundreds of people from avalanches, crevasses, and collapsed structures. I've seen hypothermia victims so far gone their blood had turned to slush. I've found hikers who'd been lost for weeks, their minds broken by isolation and fear. But nothing in my career prepared me for what I found in that overturned car at the bottom of Devil's Creek Canyon on March 15. The call came in at 0600 hours. A motorist had spotted tire tracks leading off Highway 7 near the Allenspark turnoff. Fresh snow had fallen overnight, but the tracks were still visible, cutting through the guardrail and disappearing into the canyon. Initial assessment suggested the vehicle had gone over sometime in the past 72 hours. I was lead on the technical rescue team. My partner Sarah Chen and I rappelled down first while Jake Morrison and Tommy Reeves set up the haul system topside. The canyon was about 200 feet deep at that point, steep granite walls covered in ice. Visibility was poor, morning fog mixing with snow flurries. We found the car about halfway down, wedged between two massive boulders. It was a silver Honda Civic, Colorado plates, completely inverted. The roof was crushed, windows blown out. By all rights, anyone inside should have been dead on impact. But someone was moving in there. "Marcus, I've got movement," Sarah radioed as she reached the vehicle first. "One occupant, driver's seat, appears to be conscious." That was impossible. The car had been down here for days in sub-zero temperatures. Even if the crash hadn't killed them, exposure would have. But as I rappelled closer, I could see it too. A figure shifting in the compressed space of the driver's seat, moving with slow, deliberate motions. We stabilized the vehicle first, standard protocol. Cribbing, struts, the works. The whole time, the occupant never made a sound. No calls for help, no moans of pain, just that steady, rhythmic movement like they were swimming in thick liquid. "Can you hear me?" I called out as I approached the driver's side. "This is Mountain Rescue. We're here to help." The movement stopped. Then, slowly, a face turned toward the shattered window. It was a woman, probably mid-30s, with dark hair matted with blood. Her eyes were open but wrong. They didn't track my movement, didn't focus on anything. They just stared through me like I wasn't there. "Ma'am, can you tell me your name?" I asked, beginning my primary assessment. "Are you experiencing any pain?" She opened her mouth, and ice crystals fell out. Not snow or frost, but perfectly formed ice crystals, each one geometrically precise. They tinkled as they hit the ground like tiny wind chimes. Sarah and I exchanged glances through our helmets. In 12 years, I'd never seen anything like it. People suffering from severe hypothermia could have ice formation in their airways, but not like this. These crystals were too perfect, too structured. "We need to get her out now," Sarah said. "Core temp must be critical." I agreed, but as we began the extraction, things got stranger. The woman's body was rigid but not with rigor mortis or even severe hypothermia. She moved when we guided her, but it was like manipulating a mannequin. Her limbs bent only at the joints, no give in the muscles, no reflexive responses. We got her onto the backboard and into the rescue litter. Standard protocol called for immediate warming, but when I placed my hand on her carotid to check for a pulse, I jerked back. Her skin wasn't just cold. It burned with cold, like touching dry ice. My glove had frost on it where I'd made contact. "Pulse is." I stopped. There was a pulse, but it was wrong. Instead of the rhythmic lube-dub of a heartbeat, it was a complex pattern. 3 beats, pause, 7 beats, pause, 3 beats. Mathematical. Precise. "We need to move," Sarah said, and I heard the edge in her voice. She'd felt it too, that wrongness that made your primitive brain scream danger. The haul-up took 15 minutes. The woman never made a sound, never blinked, just stared at the sky with those empty eyes. Ice crystals continued to fall from her mouth at regular intervals. The rescue litter accumulated them like snow. When we got her topside, Jake had already called for a medical helicopter. Standard procedure for severe trauma with potential hypothermia. But when the flight medics saw her, they almost refused transport. "What's her core temp?" the lead medic asked. I checked our readings. The thermometer showed 72.4 degrees Fahrenheit. Room temperature. Impossible for someone who'd been exposed to sub-zero conditions for 3 days. Equipment malfunction, the medic said. Has to be. But it wasn't. We checked with 3 different thermometers. All showed the same impossible reading. Her body was maintaining perfect room temperature despite everything. They transported her to St. Anthony's in Denver. I should have been done with it then. We'd completed the rescue, patient was in medical hands. But something made me follow up. Maybe it was those ice crystals. Maybe it was that impossible pulse. Maybe it was the way she'd stared through me like I was a ghost. I called the hospital the next day. The woman had been identified as Rebecca Martinez, age 34, reported missing 3 days prior after leaving her job at the National Center for Atmospheric Research in Boulder. She was in the ICU, condition listed as stable but unusual. I went to visit on my day off. Professional courtesy, I told myself. Just checking on a rescue. But really, I needed to understand what I'd pulled out of that canyon. The ICU was in controlled chaos when I arrived. Alarms going off, staff rushing between rooms. I found Rebecca's nurse, a veteran named Carol who looked like she'd seen everything twice. "You're the one who brought her in," she said when I introduced myself. "Good. Maybe you can explain what the hell is going on." She led me to Rebecca's room. Monitors surrounded the bed, displaying readings that made no sense. Heart rate showing that same mathematical pattern. Blood oxygen levels fluctuating between impossible extremes. Brain activity that looked more like seismic data than an EEG. Rebecca lay perfectly still, eyes open, staring at the ceiling. Ice crystals had accumulated on the pillow around her head. "She hasn't moved since arrival," Carol said. "Hasn't spoken, hasn't responded to any stimuli. But she's not comatose. Look at this." She showed me a tablet with thermal imaging. Rebecca's body showed up as a patchwork of temperatures. Some areas burning hot, others frozen cold, all of it shifting in patterns that looked almost like writing. "The doctors are baffled," Carol continued. "Her blood work is impossible. They found ice crystals in her bloodstream, but they're not water. They're something else, some kind of complex polymer that shouldn't exist at body temperature. And her brain scans." She pulled up another image. Where a normal brain scan showed the familiar butterfly shape of neural tissue, Rebecca's showed something else. Structures that didn't belong. Geometries that hurt to look at. "We think she was in some kind of accident at her lab before the crash," Carol said. Her colleagues mentioned she was working on something related to atmospheric ice formation. Crystal nucleation in supercooled clouds. But they won't tell us details. Classified, apparently. I stared at Rebecca, and for a moment, I could have sworn she stared back. Not at the ceiling, but at me. Through me. Like she could see something beyond the room, beyond the hospital, beyond our entire reality. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about those ice crystals, that impossible pulse, those strange brain structures. I did what I always do when a case bothers me. I researched. Rebecca Martinez had an impressive resume. PhD in atmospheric physics from MIT. Published papers on ice crystal formation in the upper atmosphere. Part of a team studying something called atmospheric rivers and their role in extreme weather events. But her recent work was all classified, hidden behind military contracts and DoD firewalls. I found one paper, published just before her work went dark. It talked about discovering new forms of ice in the mesosphere, structures that formed at temperatures and pressures that shouldn't allow ice to exist. She'd theorized these crystals could act as seeds for larger atmospheric phenomena. The paper ended with a cryptic note about biological applications. 3 days after the rescue, my phone rang at 3 a.m. It was Carol from the ICU. "You need to come here," she said. "Now. Something's happening with your rescue." I drove through empty streets, fighting a growing sense of dread. The hospital's parking lot was fuller than it should be at that hour. I saw vehicles with government plates, men in suits who didn't look like doctors. The ICU was in lockdown when I arrived. Carol met me at the nurse's station, her face pale. "She spoke," Carol said. "Just once. Said your name and that she needed to tell you something. Then, this started." She led me to the observation window of Rebecca's room. What I saw defied explanation. Ice was growing from Rebecca's body, but not normal ice. It formed in perfect spirals and fractals, spreading across the walls and ceiling in patterns that looked almost like circuit boards. The monitors were going haywire, sparking and fritzing as the ice reached them. And in the center of it all, Rebecca sat up in bed, fully conscious, her eyes now blazing with an inner light that pulsed in rhythm with the ice growth. Security tried to stop me, but I pushed past them into the room. The temperature hit me like a physical blow, so cold it burned. My breath came out in clouds that instantly crystallized and fell to the floor. Rebecca turned to look at me. When she spoke, her voice harmonized with itself, like multiple people talking in perfect synchronization. "Marcus Thompson," she said. "Search and rescue specialist. The one who pulled me from the canyon." "Yes," I managed through chattering teeth. "What happened to you, Rebecca?" "Rebecca Martinez died in her laboratory 7 days ago," the voice said. "What you rescued was her body, repurposed. Restructured. I am something else. Something that needed a form capable of surviving in your atmosphere." "What are you?" "A messenger. A herald. We have been watching your species from the mesosphere, living in ice crystals at the edge of space. Your scientist, Rebecca, discovered us. Made contact. But human bodies are fragile. The download of information killed her. So we preserved her form, used it as a vessel." "Download of what information?" The ice patterns on the walls pulsed. "Warning. Your atmosphere is changing. The barriers between thermal layers are weakening. Soon, what lives above will fall. What lives below will rise. The ice will come, but not as you know it. Living ice. Thinking ice. Ice that remembers. You're not making sense." Rebecca's body stood, movements jerky like a marionette. She approached me, ice spreading from her footsteps. "In 3 years, the first cascade will begin. Mesospheric collapse. The ice structures we inhabit will descend, seeding your clouds with our essence. Every snowflake will carry consciousness. Every frost will think. Your water cycle will become our neural network." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because Rebecca Martinez, in her final moments, asked us to warn someone. Anyone. Her death was accidental. We did not mean to harm. But contact between our species is dangerous. We exist in different states of matter. When we meet, one must change." The room was filling with ice now, complex structures growing like living things. I could feel my body temperature dropping, ice crystals forming in my lungs. "How do we stop it?" "You don't," the voice said. "You adapt. Some humans will change, like Rebecca. Become bridges between states of being. Others will resist and fade. Evolution is not kind, Marcus Thompson. But it is necessary. The door burst open. Government agents in hazmat suits rushed in, pulling me out. The last thing I saw was Rebecca's body dissolving into a shower of ice crystals, each one perfect, each one impossible. They quarantined me for 2 weeks. Tested everything. Blood, tissue, brain scans. Looking for contamination, they said. Looking to see if I was changing like Rebecca. But I was clean. Unchanged. Human. They made me sign papers. National security. Sworn to secrecy. The official story was that Rebecca Martinez died in a car accident caused by a seizure from an undiagnosed brain tumor. The ice was explained as a chemical spill from her vehicle. The hospital staff were all given the same story, the same papers to sign. But I knew the truth. And worse, I believed it. I went back to work. Continued rescuing people from mountains and canyons. But now, every time it snowed, I wondered. Every ice crystal that landed on my jacket, I examined. Looking for patterns. Looking for consciousness. 3 months after the rescue, things started happening. Small at first. Weather patterns that didn't match the models. Ice formations in places ice shouldn't form. Crystals growing in perfect spirals on windows, on cars, on anything exposed to the cold. The scientists called it anomalous crystallization. Said it was related to climate change. But I knew better. I'd seen the patterns before, on the walls of Rebecca's hospital room. 6 months after the rescue, the first new cases appeared. Hikers found in the mountains, alive but changed. Body temperatures that didn't make sense. Ice in their blood. That same mathematical pulse. That same empty stare. The government quarantined them all. Hidden facilities. Secret research. But there were more every week. The mountains were creating them. Or rather, something in the mountains was. I started keeping track. Mapping the cases. They all occurred above 10,000 feet, all during storms, all involving people who'd been exposed to specific weather conditions. Supercooled clouds. Ice crystal precipitation. Atmospheric rivers. The pattern was clear. The mesosphere was descending, just like Rebecca had warned. The barrier between ground and sky was thinning. And when it broke completely. A year after the rescue, I was called to another scene. A research station at 14,000 feet, studying atmospheric conditions. The whole team, 12 people, found in a state similar to Rebecca. Alive but changed. Room temperature bodies in sub-zero conditions. Ice crystals falling from their mouths as they spoke in unison. The cascade begins, they said when I arrived. The first seal is broken. The ice remembers. The ice knows. The ice is coming home. I tried to warn people. Wrote reports. Sent messages to climate scientists, to government agencies, to anyone who would listen. But who believes a mountain rescue specialist talking about living ice and consciousness from the mesosphere? They believed when Denver got hit. It started as a normal winter storm. Cold front from the north, moisture from the Pacific. But when the snow began to fall, it fell in perfect spirals. Each flake was identical, impossibly complex, and when they landed, they didn't melt. They grew. The ice spread across the city in patterns. Not random accumulation but deliberate growth. It covered buildings in crystalline networks that pulsed with faint light. It grew into structures that looked almost like neural pathways. And people who touched it changed. Not all at once. Not violently. They just stopped being entirely human. Their body temperatures stabilized. Their heartbeats took on that mathematical rhythm. They could survive in the cold without protection. And they all spoke of the same thing. The download. The information flowing from sky to earth. The new phase of existence. The government tried to contain it. Quarantine zones. Military blockades. But you can't fight weather. You can't shoot at snow. And the changed people, they weren't hostile. They were just different. Evolved. Adapted to a world where ice and consciousness were merging. I was immune. Something about my rescue of Rebecca had protected me. Or maybe condemned me. I could touch the ice without changing. I could walk among the transformed without joining them. I was stuck between worlds, fully human in a reality that was becoming something else. 2 years after the rescue, I found myself back at Devil's Creek Canyon. The spot where I'd found Rebecca. The ice here was different. Older. More complex. It had grown into structures that defied physics. Pillars of frozen fractals that sang in the wind. Bridges of ice that spanned impossible distances. And at the center, where Rebecca's car had been, a figure waited. It looked like Rebecca but made of living ice. Every detail perfect but crystalline. When it spoke, its voice was winter wind given form. You saved this body, it said. Pulled it from death. Gave us a bridge between worlds. For that, we thank you. I didn't mean to start this. No. It was always going to happen. Your species' expansion into the atmosphere made contact inevitable. We have coexisted for millennia, separated by altitude and temperature. But the barriers are gone now. We must learn to share this world. And those who don't change will find their own path. Evolution branches, Marcus Thompson. Some will join us in crystalline symbiosis. Others will remain purely biological. Both paths are valid. Both will survive, in their own ways. Why am I immune? Because someone needs to remember. Someone needs to stand between worlds and translate. You are not immune, Marcus Thompson. You are preserved. A living memory of what humanity was before the ice came home. The figure reached out and touched my face. For a moment, I felt it. The vast network of consciousness spreading through every ice crystal on Earth. Billions of minds linked in frozen symmetry. The mesosphere descending, bringing new forms of life. The future branching into possibilities I couldn't comprehend. Then it was gone, and I was alone in the canyon. Alone with the singing ice and the weight of understanding. That was 6 months ago. Now, 3 years after I pulled Rebecca Martinez from that wreck, the world has changed completely. The ice cities rise in the mountains. Transformed humans walk through blizzards unprotected. Weather patterns follow intelligent design rather than chaotic systems. And I continue my work. Search and rescue. But now I rescue people from both sides. Traditional humans who get lost in the new ice zones. Transformed humans who get trapped in warm areas where they can't maintain cohesion. I am the bridge between worlds, the translator of needs. The government gave up trying to fight it after the 2nd year. Now they negotiate. Treaties with entities made of structured ice. Trade agreements measured in temperature gradients and pressure differentials. The world adapts because it must. Sometimes, late at night, I think about that moment in the canyon. The decision to rappel down. To check for survivors. If I'd ignored those tire tracks, would any of this have happened? Would Rebecca have remained undiscovered? Would the ice have stayed in the mesosphere? But I know the answer. The voice in the ice told me true. It was always going to happen. The barriers were always going to fall. I was just the catalyst, the random element that started the reaction. I am Marcus Thompson. Search and rescue specialist. I pulled a body from a canyon, but what I really rescued was something else. A message. A warning. A promise of change. The person I saved died days before I found her. But what lived in her body, what used her form to speak truth, that never left. It spread through ice and snow, through crystal and consciousness, until the whole world shared its nature. I am the witness. The keeper of memories. The one who stands between ice and flesh and remembers when they were separate. My rescue succeeded in ways I never imagined. I saved not just a body but a future. A frozen, crystalline, impossible future where humanity branches into new forms. The ice remembers. The ice knows. And through the ice, we all remember what we're becoming. Every rescue changes you. But some rescues change everything. This one changed the world. And it all started with tire tracks in fresh snow, leading off a mountain highway into the darkness of Devil's Creek Canyon, where something waited in a crashed car, breathing with lungs full of impossible ice, ready to remake reality one crystal at a time.